Okay, let's take a deep dive into the automation. We go to Impact Suite and go to Automation. We are going to create a new one. Let's give the automation a name. Create new contact activities. We have 3 sections. Select the runtime of the automation. Use this criteria, which sets up the criteria to select the contacts. And then step 3, perform this action. So let's go and schedule. We want this to run every day. So I'm going to click on schedule. And the first thing you see is it's asking us for our credentials, meaning our database credentials. That is because this automation could run at 4 a.m. or 7 a.m., times when you're not logged into the ACT database. And as you see, the automation triggers appear. This is the same triggers that are in the Windows Task Scheduler. So if I go to here and go Task Scheduler, again, this is the Windows Task Scheduler. I'm going to select one of these Dell, and I'm going to go to the Properties. That this window here is the same as this window. So, the Dell Properties have triggers and such. So what we're doing inside of Impact is creating the automations in the Windows Task Scheduler. The one real thing here to look at is the trigger. When do you want this activity run? By default, it's set to run daily at 2 a.m. If you double click on this, you can set the times to run. So you can change it to, 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. You can set all the triggers weekly, monthly, daily, and so forth. So once you have your triggers set up, you'll say okay to that. And then you'll say okay to this automation window. And you see that it puts in now this automation is run daily at 6 a.m. every day. The second section is which criteria you use to select the contacts to run the automation against. Like I have one here that says new contacts, and there are 5 contacts in the current database match this criteria. If I looked at this one, birth date, again, I have 56 contacts with a birth date. Let's create a new criteria. Let's just say new. These are existing ones that you have in your database. I'm going to say new. I'm going to say search for contacts where, let's go to opportunity. I'm going to say where the opportunity estimated close date is within the last 7 days. And here we see that we have 6 contacts that match this criteria. So let's say okay to that. And do we want to save it? Yeah, we don't want to do this every time. And I'll say old close date. They save. I don't have to replace the lookup. That would replace the lookup in the background. We don't need to do that. We'll just say okay to that. And then we close it down and see we have the old close date in here. And again, we see that 6 contacts match that. And if I want to go back and edit it, of course, I can go back and edit it, put additional parameters in it, and so forth. The third action is, what do we want to do? Well, by default, it says schedule activity, but we can send an email, create a new opportunity. We can run a custom script. We can print a document. But what we're going to do is we're going to schedule an activity, and you just select the activity call type. So marketing call. Okay, this is a marketing call. We want to schedule, and we want to set it to high priority, and we want to select who the activity is scheduled for. So if we say the contacts record manager, then of course whoever the sales guy, the record manager of those 6 contacts would get an activity on his calendar. And then we're going to actually use more specific things like I want the off date to be, 4 days from now. Or I want the start date to be today, tomorrow. We can actually use values from the contact tables. I have, here's a birth date field. So if we were creating birth date act, last attempt date, anniversary. Subscription date, here's a custom field called subscription. Maybe this is when the subscription is ending, and we want to set it to 4 days before the subscription ends. So you can select any one of these. You can select, of course, your start time. When do you want it to time? How many minutes? And you're going to have a regarding. So we'll say this is old opportunity or old opportunity. Please review. Okay, here we have it. So you can say schedule the run times, use the criteria, and the action to perform. There are some other options that we could do down here. Let's go to our options button. If we were sending out an email, of course, you would select your email template. And these templates are ACT templates done in Microsoft Word. If I have this keeping in touch here, I can just say edit this. And here's the standard ACT template for keeping in touch. You could, of course, create your own. They would be in this list here. The second thing is capping the automation. Well, if automation is set to only send 5 a day, well, that's pretty simple. You're never going to exceed the Outlook send limit. But say you're sending out more of a campaign, you say, give me all the contacts that are a year old, where the last reach date we haven't sent to. 4,000 of them in your database. Well, if you try to send out 4,000 pieces of email in Outlook in one day, it ain't going to work. You're going to get a cap from your Gmail account or your Outlook account. And maybe you don't want to send out 4,000 pieces in a day because you get a lot of phone calls based on that. So you want a limited targeted one where I'm going to set the limit to send out 200 pieces of email a day. They'll say, hey Jim, haven't heard from you in a while. Please give me a call at this number. Generate a few leads for you every day. That's cap the automation amount. Update record. So after this automation happens, you may set a field value that, hey, I already sent him an email campaign. I already sent him that. In those conditions on your estimated close date, that criteria, you could add in a secondary condition, which would force this from not running over and over and over again. You could say when this automation happens, replace this field. Again, any field it's all in your contact table. And I'm just going to say user field 1. Replace it with a value of, I'll just say sent. Sent notice. So what's happening now is when this automation runs, user field 1 will say sent notice. The last one is create a history record after each contact. So it'll create a history for in there. So if I say okay to this, now let's go back to that condition. If I edit the condition, I can then say the contact user field 1 does not contain, I have the sent notice. Again, I just typed that in there. I'm going to add that to the list. I'm going to preview it. Again, we're still seeing 6 here. Once this runs the first time, it'll update the user field 1 with sent. And then tomorrow when it runs, it won't happen again. So you won't be sending the same piece of email over and over and over again. For that type of work where I say I want to batch it together, I want to send out 200 pieces of email a day, you really need to look at our email automation, which handles more of that internally, I'll say. In here, we have to set up the filter criteria so it doesn't repeat itself. Save changes, yes. Okay, let's just say okay to this. And what we're going to see here is we have automation in there, create new activity. That's the name. The action is activity. But as we can see, we have it set here, schedule daily at 6 a.m. These are not set to schedule. I can run those anytime I want though. If I want to come in here and hit run now, it will run that. If I come in here and run now, it'll run that too. Automation, it'll run, even though it's set to 6 a.m. If you say run now, that overrides the trigger of 6 a.m. and forces it to run immediately. It'll run that time. If I select anyone that's non-scheduled and I say run, it runs inside of ACT. ACT needs to be running because the task scheduler isn't doing it. Okay, well here, let's do this. Let's change this from creating a new contact activity. I'm going to send them an email. So let's change this from schedule activity to send email. Area below changes. So we have an email subject, and I could say, Dear Bob, Dear Jim. And what I can do here is just put in a subject line and then select the field, and I'll say first name. Here's our first name. So it says, Dear Bob, right? The email template, again, if you remember the options, these are all the email templates, all the Word templates. that are inside of ACT. I'm just going to select the email body. Now I can add an attachment. Now attachment name would be put in here, and then the attachment template. So again, it's a template in Word done inside of ACT. So here's my sales brochure, just as attachment. Updated sales brochure. And then what you want to do is you want to say select the email fields to send it to. Personal email or email. Any email fields that you have inside of ACT would be put into here. So I'm just going to select it his primary business email. I'll say okay to that. And that's it. We're done this action, and this is performing action. We're going to send an email based on all that same criteria. Okay, thank you for attending the deep dive.